Welcome back to Free Project Collaboration Tools That Rock. You are watching Module 3. And here is once again the overview of the 3 webinars in this module. You have already seen Module 1, where Andy introduced us to the collaboration challenges today. You have probably just completed Module 2 with the tools, and now we are getting into the caveats and how to get started.
Okay, in this next module, we're going to talk about selecting the right tool for the job. When you think about the different types of projects that you have in your organization, a natural question is, well, what application should I be using for the different types of projects that I have? You may be a more waterfall-based organization, or maybe you're a smaller organization using Agile, or you're a large organization using Agile. You can use a variety of these applications to help you manage and improve your project delivery with these different tools. Now, the first one we talk about is scope definition. I think anytime you're defining scope, the Mindjet Connect tool is just fantastic to be able to collaborate and develop a brainstorm list of all the tasks that you want to accomplish, or really what are all the deliverables that you need to produce within a project. I tend to be a very visual thinker, so the ability to actually see something visually helps me do the planning. And what I found is, a lot of us, we like to talk and think in terms of pictures. And when you communicate to your business stakeholder, showing them a picture that is very well defined, yet simply built, is it's a good enabler for how we handle those communications. Next, you start looking at other Agile projects. When I think about Agile, I think the way Trello is built with their lists, as well as with Asana, on how you can create your different sprints and the different tasks. You can very easily create sprints, release plans, all using either Trello or Asana. It's just a matter of creating a different board or creating a different task list. Now, if you have smaller projects, this is where Mindjet Connect Action really will help. If you build out your high-level list of all the tasks that we need to complete on this project. Let's say you're doing a fundraising campaign, or you're preparing for an upcoming seminar. You have everybody brainstorming around what are those different tasks they need to accomplish. And with a few clicks of the button, you've now distributed that entire project into Connect Action, which allows you then to go ahead and start collaborating on those individual tasks. Now that each of these websites also highlight examples of how you can use these tools to manage small projects. So Connect Action, Trello, Asana, all of them are equally equipped to help you with that collaboration. And another creative use is even on freelance projects. You have your professional projects that you're perhaps working on for your company, but maybe you also are a graphic artist, or you're a photographer. There's other things that you can do in the freelance space where all 3 of these tools would be excellent choices to use from a freelance perspective. I know in my own blog writing and as a freelance writer, I use Asana and I use Trello to really help build my list of articles that I'm writing, and then how am I going to manage that workflow of promoting those articles and distributing it through social media and so on. So there's a lot of personal project management applications that you can do with these tools. And also, if you think about workflow management, I realize it's not really a project, but it's more operational in nature. Or if you have a company that's doing more administration, where a case needs to move from phase to phase or from status to status, Trello is fantastic for using workflow management, because you can define your own toll gates or your own phases. And as a customer incident comes in, let's say it's a help desk or it's a customer request, it can move from in the queue, assigned to somebody, to actually closed and resolved.
Before we move on, let me ask you a very selfish question here, because my company doesn't fit any of this here, because we are a team of about 7 members, mostly administrative people. So we do, administrative work for the company, marketing, distribution of things, and we live all around the globe. And like I said, not really projects, but mostly really recurring tasks. For instance, let's look at the PDU podcast here, this recording here. We do this once a month, and then, somebody has to contact the presenter. Can you please send me your image? Can you please send me your bio? That has to go up on the website. We have to write an article about it. We have to upload the videos. We have to tell everybody the new webinar is out there. So repetitive tasks that are, sort of almost like a task list, but I do the same thing this month and next month. And that just translates to everything that we do, very similar. What can we use? Anything?
Well, in those examples, I would look at both Asana or Trello. So Asana allows you to take a project and make it a templated project.
Okay.
So I've done that for, say I'm doing blog setup for a client, or I'm helping them develop a new website or implement a marketing campaign. Well, I've got my own processes of how I do that consulting, where I set that up in a task list within Asana. And as I get a new client, I just duplicate that project, assign a new client name, and run through those tasks. So very similar to the PDU podcast. You have a set of repetitive tasks that you run each month, and those can be set up within the Asana tool. And you also could do that with Trello, where you have your lists that indicate what you're working on for the year or for the month. And then each of those podcasts show up as a card that move across those different phases. And you use the checkboxes in Trello to track, have you actually completed that specific task for that podcast?
I guess in the end, you have to know what it is that you're doing. You have to know how you are collaborating with your team members, and based on that, you have to find a tool, a process, a workflow that works in your environment for your specific needs, right? You can't just say, oh, use this or that or the other. You have to actually do an analysis and figure it out yourself.
Yeah, I would encourage all your listeners just to go out and play with these tools and just get a feel for what's the easiest for you to use. What's the easiest that fits your organization or your environment? Okay, so let's talk about some of the caveats with using these solutions. Since these are all hosted models, you want to think a little bit about security. And fortunately, it's good to know that these solutions all leverage security best practices. They have secure HTTPS encryption protocols. They are backed up by SAS 70 certifications, as well as they have full data backups in real data centers. So I've reached out to these organizations to do my due diligence, and they've confirmed that they have these pieces in place in terms of overall security to make sure your data is safe. But the caveat I have here is before you start storing corporate data on somebody else's servers, you want to check with your organization's information security policy, check with your management to make sure that this is something that really makes sense to do. Because the last thing I want to have is have somebody go ahead and lose their job because they've leaked some sensitive piece of data because they listened to a particular podcast and the fact that Andy recommended it.
Quick question for you: do you know if any of these tools can be installed internally on my intranet?
I don't believe any of these are being offered for local installed solutions.
Okay.
Now each of these models are all being released under this freemium model. Asana in particular has introduced a new paid service that if you have a really large organization, that they have additional features that you can buy into. But everything we've talked about here is all based off of the free solution. But those are all hosted solutions that they manage and maintain.
Right, because I do have a friend in the aerospace industry, and he is unable to use any of these tools outside, but he was able to actually bring a tool to manage his Kanban board into his organization, so they're able to use it internally. All right, moving on. Do you have more caveats for us here?
Yeah, so the other piece here is when we talk about scheduling. What you've noticed with these tools, all of them lack a true predictive scheduling engine. Mindjet Connect does have a feature called task blocking that's useful to indicate that there's predecessors and that a task is particularly delayed. But all these tools, they lack any true critical path analysis or predictive scheduling. So you look at the power of what Microsoft Project provides. It's a scheduling and forecasting tool where these tools favor more of a pick a date project management style, which, some would argue that's more of an adaptive flavor. If you're managing an agile project, your dates are going to be fixed within a given iteration. Or for project organizations that are lower in project management maturity, they're going to favor the pick a date project management style because they're using Excel to manage some of these higher level tasks rather than a true scheduling tool. But these are things I think that will emerge as these tools mature and as they grow in the industry and as customers start asking for those types of features.
And by predictive, you mean we have 20 tasks in one of these tools, and if you put all these tasks after each other and each takes a day, it takes 20 days to complete, so our project will end on July 20th.
Correct. We were actually building tasks with finish to start dependencies.
Right. Dependencies.
And where that relationship is recognized.
Okay.
Yeah.
More caveats to come.
So when we look at this next slide of the other caveats is that it is a shared service. All these tools are free. There's no dedicated support where you can just pick up the phone and get someone who's going to be your customer service rep for your particular issue. It's offered under a free model, so that does have certain concerns that if you're putting sensitive data that's mission critical, that you need to manage your project, that if you can't get access to the data, your best bet or your only recourse is to go through the email support forum. Now, I will say I've been using these tools for about a year now, and they've been fantastic in terms of reliability, and I haven't had any technical issues. And when I have emailed support, I've always gotten some good responsive feedback. But I think because these are offered under this freemium model, at some point these tools do need to move into a paid model to be sustainable. Trello is made by Fog Creek Software, and that's a full software development shop. Asana is founded by the guys who started Facebook, and Mindjet Connect is an active company with their own revenue streams. But at some point they need to move into a paid model. I think that's where you may see more of that dedicated service, where if you're willing to pay for support, they're able to provide those support options for you. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. When you think about, you've seen these tools, you've seen how they can be used. We talked a little bit about the caveats. My recommendation really is just to jump in and start playing with these tools for your own personal project management and your own personal task lists. Go ahead and access Mindjet Connect to help start brainstorming scope. Think about using Asana for a personal to-do list. And if you think about how you can use Trello, start developing what you think are a mock agile iteration, or how would you develop a feature set for a product backlog. What you'll find is consultants and freelancers, if you're managing virtual assistants, all these can be very effective to easily engage and work with your customers to manage these tools. So if we go to the next slide, I want to encourage you also to start communicating, because these tools are only as good as the people that are actually touching the keyboards. You can close that instant messenger, and my recommendation too is go back and think about what's the best way to interact and communicate, and that's really where you get up off the desk, you walk down to that team member, you talk to them in person, and you'll get a coffee or go get a beer. I want to encourage you to start communicating, because these collaboration tools will help facilitate and help improve project delivery. But nothing really replaces that face-to-face conversation on how we're going to get things done. So finally, if we look at the next slide, here's a list of all the URLs and resources. What you'll see is Mindjet Connect is accessible via the URL vision.mindjet.com. And same thing with the Mindjet Connect Action tool. At the time of this presentation, these two tools were separate, and just recently they've combined the tools into one interface. So by going to vision.mindjet.com, you'll have access to both the mind mapping feature as well as the action feature that is built there. Just as a side note, Mindjet Connect Action was previously called Cohuman, and Mindjet had acquired them and have integrated them into their technical solution. Asana is located at asana.com, as well as Trello is located at trello.com.
And with that, we have come to the final checkpoint and questions slide here in our presentation. And we're going to make this sort of a little bit of a summary, a review, well, a checkpoint of the complete webinar. So, Andy, with all of the tools, the first thing I asked you, well, what is the main concept you want us to take away from this tool? So, this is the final slide. What is the main concept that you want us to take away from this webinar?
Well, I'd like you to think about how can you improve your project delivery using collaboration tools that truly support managing data centrally and having teams interact off of that central data source. So instead of the disparate nature of us emailing or instant messaging each other, can we start collaborating around a common tool that helps us develop a schedule, that helps us develop specific tasks with end dates that we need to accomplish, and also allows us to organize our thoughts, our comments, our communications, and even project assets all around a common repository. Because I think once you look at how you can adopt these tools for your project management processes, you're going to see a quick efficiency and more time saved, because now we're using a tool to do things that we typically would do via other disparate tools that aren't as integrated.
All right. You started out the webinar by looking at the inefficiencies that we have in today's environment with the tools that do not have this central database where they are all connected together. Now, you've shown us 4 tools that overcome this very nicely. But what other options do we have? What if I am in an organization where I'm not allowed to use these tools? What other options are available there for me?
Well, and then we need to look at, if you can't use a tool, you got to look at communication. And I've yet to find a better replacement than just getting up and going to talk to somebody. We often will hide behind email. We'll say we've sent a text. We do these features to avoid some of the tougher conversations. But being able to just recognize the need to communicate, and even with remote teams, one of the best practices that I recommend in my programs when we're using distributed teams is let's have the kickoff event and we fly everybody in, so at least everybody can see each other and do that direct communication. And then we can go back and leverage these tools to support the collaboration. But at some point, we have to establish that trust. You have to look that person in the eye and say, hi, how you doing? And build that bond to how you're going to work together as a project team. These tools are just tools. And if you don't interact with communication, it's going to fail as well.
And my final question for you, you've told us when we can use these tools and how we can use these tools and what project types they, are recommended by you. When should we not use these tools?
Well, some of the concerns that you're going to want to think about are in the caveats. Are these the types of tools that your organization will let you put your data out onto their servers without any guarantee of being able to access the data at a 24/7 time slot? What I find is that perhaps if you're a smaller organization that you don't have the budget for a project management tool, these are tools that you can very quickly use, and they're free services, much like all the Google Docs and the Google collaboration tools that are out there. But those are some of the concerns that you're going to have about making sure that your data is secure, and also making sure that your corporation is not going to mind you putting sensitive materials out there on a server that they don't control.
And with that, we have come to the end of this webinar. If you would like to get in touch with Andy, here is his email address, andy@tacticalprojectmanagement.com, and obviously the website is at tacticalprojectmanagement.com. What do you offer on the website, Andy?
On the project management website, I have a variety of project management tips. I maintain a whole blog on effective project management techniques. And in terms of other products that I have, you can go ahead and take a look at the Microsoft project tutorials that I offer as I train other project managers on how to effectively use Microsoft Project.
Wonderful. In that case, thank you very much for having been here with us today, Andy. Very, very educational. Appreciate your time.
Well, thank you very much. I enjoyed it.